Auction. When they arrived in America, the slaves were taken off the ship and thrown into a cage to await the auction. Before the auction started, they were cleaned up. They put oil on the slaves to make them look healthy. They drugged them up to make them calm, and they put hot tar on the slaves' back to hide the whip marks. When the auction started, they played the drums. Then first slave got pushed onto the auction block, and then the auction begins. The plantation owners would be able to inspect the slave. They inspected the mouth, and sometimes they were taken away, stripped and inspected further. The auctioneer called out the prices for the buyers to bid on. The ones with the highest bid got the slaves. Once the slaves were brought, the owners would make them give them another name, so that people didn't know they were African. They were given names out of the Bible, the most common, like David and Tobit.
After the slaves were brought by traders, they had to work on the plantation. The slaves were forced to work really hard for their new owners on the plantations that were usually owned by rich people with large houses. And they had to look after crops like cotton, sugar, tobacco and coffee. It was very hard for slaves. They worked from dawn until dusk with very little rest. A typical slave day is a 5:30 wake-up call, and they go straight onto the fields and take their breakfast straight with them. Work until 8 a.m, and if you arrive late you are whipped. At 8 a.m. they stopped for breakfast. After breakfast at 8:30 they continued with their work until 12, when they broke up for lunch. At 2 p.m. they started work again until they returned to their huts at 6 p.m. During the harvest season, work continued in the middle of the boarding houses overnight. Music and celebrations. Some owners allow slaves to organise dances and that Christmas parties might be held. Music was very important to slaves. Slaves showed how they felt about their lives, and they made music with whatever was available. One slave recorded how the horn of a buffalo was made into a flute. Weddings were a cause for celebration. Some slaves were allowed to marry in the big house, but many became man and wife by simply jumping over a broomstick. All slaves realised, however, that they were only married for as long as their master or mistress permitted it. He or she could sell them and split up families at any time. Food and clothing. Food was a basic and amount varied. If slaves had to be in the field by dawn, their first meal might not be until midday. Clothes are often provided on a yearly basis, but on some plantations, slaves worked virtually naked or in rags. Rebellions, escapes and punishments. Rebellions would be brutally crushed, as the very idea of a slave revolt terrified the white slave owners. They were horrified by the 1831 Nats Turner Revolt, which killed nearly 60 white people. Turner was caught and hanged, but the black people paid a terrible price for his revolt. 55 of his followers were executed. A further 200 innocent black people were lynched. Some slaves roasted in the masters of the wares. Some stole, some destroyed crops and tools. Many ran away, a lot hid in woods and swamps, or joined Indian tribes. One slave